he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to you.
Things are still operating there. Things are still moving right along. Was Epstein Island ever raided?
But men that I just watched go up there, they all come down off the shuttle looking sad in the eyes. All of them wearing Sean John and looking oily.
Terrence Howard appears to have stirred major attention with statements suggesting that Diddy and Epstein might have shared more similarities than people previously thought. In a recent interview, Howard made a surprising claim that Diddy once invited him over for an unusual reason. At first, the request seemed work-related. Diddy reportedly asked for help with acting advice. Later, he wanted to listen to his music, but Howard said the situation felt strange. According to him, Diddy mostly sat quietly observing him rather than actually responding to the acting or music.
Invited me for weeks, asking me to come and teach him how to, wanted me to be his acting coach for a while. Go there and he's sitting around just looking. I'm like, okay, what's the material you want to work on? He's just looking at me. Then next thing you know, okay, hey, will you help me? I want to hear your music. So I come over there and I play the music. And he's sitting there just looking at me, like waiting. Okay. So then my assistant was like, he wants to hang out with you next week. And I was like, for what? He's like, I think he's trying to you. That's what my assistant said. And I was like, oh, okay. Now I get it. So now no more communication. Now you know to be hands-off with somebody.
He talked about how Hollywood can mess with your mind. He said when people lose money, lose roles, or feel pressure to stay famous, they start doing things they normally wouldn't do. All of this is taken advantage of by people like Diddy and Epstein.
Losing out money, you got to take drugs. You're going through so much to try and deal with life. You are literally, it's an unhealthy space. And so eventually you're going to go too far. Who knows what happened to Philip? Who knows what he had to do in order to get to where he was at? There's a lot of things that people do that end up sitting and they can't get over it. And they got to keep getting high, hoping to get it out of their head. But when you lose your man card, that's the only thing I can think of. You lose your damn man card.
What is that? What do you mean by that?
You give up your ability, your right to being a man. A man don't take it, a man gives it. So when you give up that man card, you don't get that back.
Are you saying what I think you're saying?
No, I'm saying what I'm saying. You don't get that back. You come into this world as a man one time. You give up that right for anything, for fear of being hurt, fear of somebody doing something, for wanting to gain something. When you give up that man card right, you lose some spiritual energy that has always been pushing through. Like if a woman gives up her womanly right of being a mother and taking care of her family and do all those things, when you give up those things, but when you give up your manhood, I've never seen somebody recover from it. That was all the people that went to the puffy parties. That was all the people that did all those things thinking that there was never going to be a consequence for what they were.
Terrence Howard feels there may be a larger system operating behind the scenes, one where influence, hidden information, pressure, and manipulation are used to control others. This is where the Epstein comparison comes into focus. For years, Epstein faced allegations of using his connections and private events to gain influence over powerful figures. Now, as more discussions surface about exclusive gatherings and secretive networks, some people suspect there may be shared spaces linking the worlds of entertainment and politics.
Epstein girls triggered a bigger alarm.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. Why is nobody paying attention to the fact that there were age girls that were allegedly attached to Diddy?
Katt Williams has also spoken.
Some people ask, how can you talk about what happened at those parties if you weren't actually inside? The explanation given was that these events were held in the Hollywood Hills. Guests would first gather in a nearby parking area where shuttle vans would take them up to the house. Everyone would meet there before being driven to the party. He said he stayed in that parking lot and watched the guests head up. Hours later, he was still there when they returned. He noticed that several well-known Hollywood figures who had gone up earlier came back looking unusually quiet and uncomfortable. Many of them were dressed in Sean John outfits, their skin appearing shiny, and they seemed to be walking stiffly. He also pointed out that their shoelaces were often untied, though he didn't know why. After that, they would get into their cars and leave, which he found hard to understand.
People indeed do ask that. How do you know what goes on at the P. Diddy party if you weren't at the P. Diddy party? They would have these parties in the Hollywood Hills. They would have a parking lot where they would shuttle people up. So everybody would meet in this parking lot and they would send shuttles down to, Diddy's parties. I would go to the parking lot and I would watch them all go up there. 5 hours later, I'm still in the parking lot when they come down. Just to see all them big time Hollywood men that I just watched go up there, they all come down off the shuttle looking sad in the eyes. All of them wearing Sean John and looking oily, and they all walk crazy like this, and their shoelaces were always untied. I don't know why. And then they would get in their car and they would drive off standing up. Big boy, all of them. I couldn't believe it.
He said, "You can treat it like a joke if you want, but the only ones not laughing are the people who rode that shuttle." While Katt and Terrence say they've experienced the entertainment world firsthand, others like investigative journalist Whitney Webb have spent years researching and reporting on these kinds of claims. Over time, she has said she started noticing similar patterns in how high-profile figures such as Epstein and Diddy were described as operating.
Nutshell, the interest in the Diddy case was similar to my interest in the Epstein case initially, in that, the way the media narrative is about these cases is sort of, very focused on either Diddy or Epstein, and like they were the mastermind of all of this stuff. And these people never exist in a vacuum. They tend to have significant moneyed benefactors that somehow evade persecution or even investigation. That's very obvious in the Epstein case, but I think it's also pretty true as it relates to, the Diddy case as well. And he learned this behavior that he's now, in prison for and awaiting trial for from, various other figures that have somehow evaded the kind of charges that now face Diddy. And why is that? So the Diddy case has had a lot of involvement from the Department of Homeland Security, which is kind of unusual, it seems. So Clive Davis in particular is the person that is really credited with allowing Bad Boy Records to be a success, because, they really wanted to have been successful if they didn't enter into that very early distribution and promo deal with Clive Davis's Arista Records, when they were created. And this is also true of, his mentor, Andre Harrell at Uptown Records. Uptown Records wanted to have been successful if it wasn't for their distribution deal with MCA, for example, which is now Universal Studios. A lot of similarities in the charges in some ways to the Epstein and also Ghislaine Maxwell cases. But what's interesting, though, is that, whereas with Epstein and Maxwell, it was sort of the FBI and SDNY leading, I think the same is true for Russell Simmons' label Def Jam, but I think in their case it was CBS Records, which is also related to sort of the Clive Davis story. Clive Davis was at sort of the at a major post within the CBS recording subsidiaries. He got involved in this major payola scandal, which is basically, generally payola is when there's bribery to get, singles of a particular artist or a particular label played more on certain stations, which is illegal. But in the case of Clive Davis, it was payola basically tied to a heroin ring, and his top assistant, his main aide, was known for sort of being a fixer at the label and supplying, these stations they were, allegedly bribing, and also just other people, artists, under the label and whatever, with drugs, with products, with all sorts of things. Clive Davis arguably evaded charges for that. He got let go of CBS. Why it was kind of hot. The investigation, arguably because they didn't want any of the scandal beyond the payola aspect to come back and bite the company in the butt, basically. And it was that heroin ring, by the way, was tied to organized crime interests. Mainly, I believe the Genovese crime family, which had kind of a long and storied history in the music industry through Roulette Records and figures like Morris Levy, who, for example, funded the first hip hop label, Sugar Hill. And so, there's basically been this sort of this unorganized crime effort to dominate those particular labels for some time. And Davis stands accused of people that were once close to, Combs and later became rivals, like Suge Knight, and also his former bodyguard Gene Deal, of sort of training Diddy in this using drugs and to control people.
According to reports and past investigations, figures like Epstein and Diddy were not believed to act by themselves. They were said to have strong financial supporters, influential partners, and high-level connections, individuals who rarely faced legal consequences or deep investigations. That repeated pattern is something some researchers continue to point out. Though they speak in different ways, several voices are raising similar concerns. As these discussions grow, more people argue that the entertainment industry may have unseen layers of influence. There are circles of power. There are exclusive invitations that not everyone is willing to accept. And sometimes, the bigger story isn't just what supposedly happens at private events, but how people seem changed afterward. One public figure who has repeatedly spoken about allegations surrounding Diddy is singer Jaguar Wright. She has recently shared her views on various industry controversies, including claims connected to the widely discussed Wayfair conspiracy theory.
Epstein was involved heavily in the human trafficking, to where Wayfair, there was, some young girls missing throughout the past few decades, where after a girl goes missing, Wayfair will technically have a furniture piece with the young girl's name at a listed price of, $10,000, $12,000, $8,000, where the pieces of furniture were sold. There's receipts of that, a lot purchased by Jeffrey Epstein's assistant, as far as possibly tracking. And those same items that were listed, you could go back on there now and see them down for regular price, $200, $300, to where they were using the internet and Wayfair as a way, which is a furniture company, as a way to sell, humans. To see that, just give me your thoughts on possibly that level of execution when it comes to human trafficking.
I mean, the truth is when it comes to that business, because it is a business, it's a huge business, none of us are really prepared to have that conversation. I've sat here with y'all already, and I've talked to y'all about girls getting moved around on tours and tour buses, girls getting moved around on video shoots. There's 80 trillion ways to sell a human being. The question is why is it so hard to believe that any of that stuff could be possible?
According to her, a lot of crime doesn't hide in dark alleys. It hides in plain sight. Regular neighborhoods, ordinary houses. She said, you could drive past something illegal every single day and never once know it.
Called into FBI tip lines. Who didn't investigate? Who didn't do more due diligence? Who didn't bother to at least go and discredit these things that were being called in? It's all possible. And I don't understand why anybody is thinking that it's not. It's just, there are so many ridiculous stories being pushed out with the truth at the same time. It's done intentionally so people won't believe the truth when they hear it, or so people will doubt it. I'm not saying that the Wayfair thing is real, and I'm not going to sit up here and say that it's not possible, because it is possible. The question is, by the time we get to the truth, is anybody even going to believe it? Because there's going to be 80 million different versions of the story of what actually happened. Am I making sense?
No, total sense. And like you said, it's happening in plain sight. It's probably happening in your neighbor's house. Who knows?
Listen to me. If you got whole neighborhoods being bought up by cartels, neighborhoods in residential areas being ran by criminal organizations where everything looks normal, people are driving by not even realizing that's a whole thing over there. Some of those houses are probably holding people who are, being traded or sold. Like,
Was
She explained
investigated,
that many illegal
particularly
activities
regarding his
don't
island.
always take
What
place in
happened
hidden
to it?
corners or
What happened
abandoned
to the plane?
streets.
What
Instead,
happened to the
she
properties, the
believes they can
tunnels, the
exist
money?
out in the open,
She
in
also
normal
raised another
neighborhoods
compelling
and everyday
argument that
homes.
seems to cast
According
serious
to her,
doubt on how the
someone could
entire
pass by
Epstein
something
situation.
unlawful
These are the
every
same
day
questions that
without
were raised
ever
about Diddy's
realizing what was
alleged criminal
really happening.
These things don't disappear in thin air.
No, I'm trying to, nobody's paying attention to a lot of things. Like, for all we know, things are still operating there. Things are still moving right along. Was Epstein Island ever raided? Did they ever do a raid there? Did anybody ever go there to confiscate or to, did you ever hear about it? Because I didn't.
Yeah, I did not.
So who knows? It's there was rumors that those tunnels were taken over by particular governments who were still letting things operate after they moved El Chapo out of the way. So it's like, you said, the world is on fire.
The world is on fire.
I'm just sick
All right.
of people calling me a damn liar. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If people still think that I'm crazy with everything that's coming out, then maybe you need to go and get your mental health checked. Like, we got to it's gotten to the point where just calling somebody that's saying things that make you feel uncomfortable crazy.
Jaguar shared that many people are quick to label her as unstable. However, as more details continue to come out, she feels that criticism doesn't carry the same weight it once did. She believes it's easier for some to avoid uncomfortable topics by attacking the person speaking instead of addressing what's being said. She also stated that situations like these can remain hidden for years because victims are often doubted, or they may truly be afraid of what could happen if they decide to speak publicly.
What is the mentality behind even people that you know?
Fear.
That word moves around a lot.
Fear. It's fear. Why would you want to throw yourself out there when you have people that have access to lawyers, who have access to private investigators, who have the ability to hunt you down at your house, at your doctor's office, hunt down your family members, bother them, harass them? And by the way, just in case people have forgotten the details that I'm speaking of, that's what happened to that 13-year-old autistic victim. Well, she was 13 at the time. She's now in her late 30s, of course, in Alabama, who was being represented by Tony Busby. When you think about what happened with her situation, like, let's think about that. Because she was all kinds of railroaded, all kinds of stalked, all kinds of harassed, to the point where she was willing to dismiss her lawsuit with prejudice, meaning the lawsuit could never be brought back up again. Those claims could never be addressed in court again. And it was all because they were lying, right? They were lying. And then your accuser goes to court to sue your lawyer for defamation. Can't prove it. It gets thrown out. They take it to a higher court because they're looking for consideration. Still can't prove it. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's who's going to protect?
At this point, similar statements have come from people with very different careers, perspectives, and life experiences, yet many of them seem to suggest the same idea. Those in positions of influence often protect their own interests. And at times, the entertainment world appears to intersect with powerful circles that the general public rarely sees or fully understands. A widely discussed example often mentioned in these conversations is Prince Andrew.
The arrest of a senior member of the royal family is extraordinary. It's considered unprecedented in the modern history of the British monarchy. Errol?
All right, Tina, thank you very much. We now want to discuss this with CBS News royal contributor Amanda Foreman. Amanda, good morning. I only see you when there's crisis with the royal family. And this is something you and I have never discussed before, that the family in the modern era has never seen. So for the monarchy, how stunning a development is this arrest?
Well, it is a stunning development for the public. For the royal family, obviously, they will have known that bad things were about to happen to Andrew, and they have been in damage control now for several weeks. As we know, he moved from his home Royal Lodge to Sandringham very, very quickly indeed, a couple of weeks ago, and has been up north in Sandringham ever since. So this isn't a total surprise.
Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, the younger brother of King Charles III, comes on Andrew's 66th birthday. The former prince, who was stripped of his royal titles late last year over his ties to convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein, is now in custody, being questioned on suspicion of misconduct in public office, a serious charge that on conviction carries a life prison sentence. Police arrested him at his home on one of the King's royal estates this morning, a few hours outside of London. They're now carrying out searches at 2 addresses in that area. They're also assessing reports that the former royal sent sensitive trade reports to the billionaire pedophile back in 2010, confidential information about investment opportunities around the world, including Afghanistan and Hong Kong. Multiple police departments across the UK have previously said they were reviewing ties between Andrew and Epstein, including allegations that a woman was tracked here to the UK by Epstein to have a encounter with the king's brother. Andrew, always denying any wrongdoing in relation to Epstein, says he regrets their friendship.
It's important to remember that an arrest does not equal guilt. It simply means authorities believe there is enough reason to continue an investigation. If formal charges are filed and later lead to a conviction, misconduct in public office can bring serious consequences under UK law. This inquiry is separate from the civil lawsuit he resolved in 2022 with Virginia Giuffre, who had accused him of abuse when she was underage. That case ended in a settlement without any admission of wrongdoing. Officials have stated that the current investigation is not connected to that earlier matter. Even so, discussions about ties to Epstein continue to come up.
Revelations about the former Prince Andrew have been found in the huge batch of Epstein files released last week. Among them is an email apparently from Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, which appears to contradict Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's long-held suggestion that the now infamous photo of him with a victim, Virginia Giuffre, was not real. There are also new allegations about what went on at Epstein's Florida home 20 years ago. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor has always denied any wrongdoing. Here's Ellie Price and a warning her report contains some fairly explicit details.
This is the image that marks the start of the slow downfall of a prince. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor with his accuser Virginia Giuffre when she was 17.
I have no recollection of ever meeting this lady. None whatsoever.
But he did meet her, and according to an email from Ghislaine Maxwell to Jeffrey Epstein, she wanted to state for the record as fact. In 2001, she was in London and met a number of friends, including the former prince, and that's when the photo was taken. But now,
recently released records reportedly show that in 2010, Andrew shared information about official travel plans, including trips to Vietnam and Singapore, with Epstein. After those documents became public, the anti-monarchy organization Republic filed a formal complaint with the police. At the same time, as more billionaires and high-profile executives have faced scrutiny, some have taken noticeable steps to separate themselves from any potential wrongdoing. For example, Les Wexner has stated that Epstein misled and manipulated him regarding any connection they had. That's the larger situation surrounding these developments.
That's the background. Here's what's happening today that's new. The House compelling a powerful billionaire who's usually behind the scenes, Les Wexner, to go under oath to provide answers about his long business history with Epstein. He was interviewed where he lives in Ohio. Democratic lawmakers led this questioning today. Some Republican staff members, we're told, also attended. Now, Wexner's a key figure because we already knew Epstein made so much money off of him. This is one example of a photograph from the Oversight Committee with an individual redacted, again, under the reasons we've been told, but the two men having a drink, hanging out, whatever you see there. Now, Epstein made money off this man, and we know big sums were also returned. Now, lawmakers say their evidence shows over $1 billion cumulatively went from Wexner to Epstein, and that he's in the files over 1,000 times. You're looking at one file, one photograph. There are many, many other references and contacts with him. Now, that $1 billion is part of the fortune that ultimately propped up Epstein's crime spree. And it's been documented that Wexner, back in the day, cut ties with Epstein around his first legal problems in Florida. And if you think about some of the people who've gotten in trouble recently, you remember a lot of them are being basically held to account because after Epstein's conviction for crime involving a minor, what they call soliciting for someone under 18, and people years later were in contact with him and they got in trouble for that. This one is a little different. Wexner can show and point to evidence, financially and otherwise, there's documents that they cut ties around that time. In fact, Wexner also says Epstein stole from him, and they got some of that money back, as I mentioned. Now, today, the new Wexner testimony includes a public statement where he describes how, despite his own business skills and, purported acumen and intelligence, he says he was duped by a world-class con man and that he regrets ever having met him. Wexner also suggested today that Epstein was a skilled manipulator living a type of, quote, double life, and that he would compartmentalize different sets of people and crimes. Now, if you do an investigation, you follow these kind of pieces of testimony or allegation. And there's some support for that because the emails do show Epstein kind of operating in a different way, even with very different language and different sort of references depending on who he's dealing with. The key question that I'm going to get to here is whether Wexner knew that or not. Wexner suggests that he was only and essentially one of Epstein's financial victims.
When you take a step back, this situation seems bigger than just Hollywood. Terrence Howard described receiving invitations that made him uncomfortable. Katt Williams spoke about what he claims to have observed at exclusive events. Jaguar Wright raised concerns about how trafficking operations could exist openly without being noticed. Now, a high-ranking member of the British royal family is reportedly facing investigation related to Epstein. Many people see this as a troubling pattern appearing in different parts of the world. That's what makes the conversation so unsettling for some. If multiple influential figures appear linked in some way, it starts to feel less like separate incidents and more like a connected system. Do you think additional information will surface? Share your thoughts in the comments below.